India RBI shows currency with the public as on 22nd October 2021 rose 3 times as compared to end November 2016. While rupees 28.25 lakh crores was outstanding as currency with the public end of October this year, this figure was at 9.11 lakh crores as of end November 2016. The currency in circulation has also doubled post demonetization. As of the week ending October 29, 2021, rupees 29.44 lakhs crore was the outstanding currency in circulation. For the week ending November 18, 2016, the currency in circulation was 14.4 lakhs crores. There have been 105 reports of deaths in connection to the demonetization policy. These deaths are spread out throughout the country, with Uttar Pradesh topping the death toll with 28 deaths. To discuss this very, very important and relevant topic, because why it is relevant, that the youth, the youngsters should know whether a decision taken by the government is right or wrong, whether such type of decision should be taken with the help or with the knowledge of experts, or it should be taken by the political leadership without consulting the economist, is required, is there or not. So to discuss this all aspects of demonetization, whether it proved to be a successful, as our Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Modi, mentioned that the terrorism will be over, the black money will be over, everything will be over within 50 days. He has given a time window of 50 days. 50 days, whether it was fulfilled or not, we will be discussing this in our today's program. And we have a very elite, very knowledgeable, those who knows about this particular act of the government of India. Panelists are with us, and I would like to invite my first panelist guest, and he is Professor Dr. Ramoth Pathak. Professor Dr. Ramoth Pathak is a reputed international corporate trainer, public speaker, blogger, and columnist. He is the former professor and head of management studies, IIT Dhanbad. He is postgraduated in psychology and an MBA with PhD in stress management from Banaras Hindu University. He is a reputed management and psychological consultant and is founder of Kaizen Mantra, a training and consulting organization. He has also founded the Goodness Movement that aims to spread positivity through writings and lectures. His columns are published in leading newspapers and periodicals, and his blogs are read globally. He was also on Faculty Institute of Management, BHU. Having guided some 30 PhDs successfully, he has written several books and over 100 research articles in reputed journals. As a global lecturer, he has delivered talks at various international seminars, conferences, and workshops in several countries. Welcome, Professor Dr. Ramoth Pathak, on our show. Professor Dr. Ramoth Pathak, you have heard about the report which I read about the demonetization, and you have seen yourself. And you, being a professor, former professor in a management, reputed management institute, and you know the psychological effect also, and you are writing through blogs and reputed journals also. We would like to know your views on demonetization, success or failure. Professor Dr. Ramoth Pathak, please.
Thank you, Mr. Goel. It's a very pertinent issue to discuss demonetization. In fact, the debate that you have started is demonetization success or failure. I would like to put it in another way, that demonetization, whether it was needed or not. So according to me, it was not needed. See, demonetization is a step that is usually taken when economies are in distress. There was no such thing like that in 2016, number one. Second, demonetization is a very carefully planned step that, in fact, may cause a chaos or a serious downturn if it goes wrong. And we saw how it went wrong. In fact, in most cases, demonetization usually doesn't lead to the desired results. In US also in 1873, they in fact demonetized silver coins, but in 1878 again they had to remonetize. So that is there. And then how government takes decisions, how government takes decisions, that also is very important to know here. In fact, I'll take the viewers back to 1969 when the banks were nationalized, and the finance secretary was Mr. L.K. Jha, ICS, and Mrs. Indira Gandhi was the prime minister. And the prime minister called Mr. Jha and told her about her decision to nationalize banks. And being the seasoned bureaucrat that he was, Mr. Jha advised against it. And you know what Mrs. Gandhi did? She told him that, look here, I have not called you to seek your opinion. I have called you to tell me how to do it. So that is how politicians behave when they are, ruled by their own whims and their own ideas. So something similar seems to have happened in 2016 also. And it was, in fact, on that very evening, I still remember, because I'm a known person over here. So the newspaper fellows, they called me and said that, what do you think about this move? I said, this is a disaster. It was not to be done, but it has been done. And the claim that it will bring out black money, that also, in fact, ultimately proved wrong. What exactly happened was that it did not bring out the black money. In fact, it was about the money saved through blood and toil of the poor people that came out. In fact, I remember the next morning, the maid who works in my house, she brought some soiled notes worth around 6,000 rupees and said that, Bhaiya, isko kaise badalna, how to change this? I said, look here, I'll help you, don't worry. But you first go to the bank. And there were, this is one case, there were, I think, lakhs of such cases all over the country. So, in fact, there was no need for demonetization at that time. The economy was doing well. And all of a sudden, I don't know why it was done. And the assumption that people usually do not usually store their black money in cash is also not very correct. In fact, this was observed as early as 1978 when I.G. Patel was the Governor Reserve Bank and H.M. Patel was the Finance Minister and Morarji Desai was the Prime Minister. All three, incidentally, were from Gujarat state. And, I.G. Patel was not in favor of this demonetization because he said that people usually do not store black money in cash for too long. But it will affect the masses, and it was still not heeded to. And in fact, Morarji Desai government went ahead with the decision. And in fact, Morarji Desai's idea was also there to immobilize the funds of the opposition. That was his idea. And something similar seems to be the idea over here also. Because it is usually the politicians who stash cash in huge amounts, and they, of course, were affected. But in fact, the fact is that the assumption that it will bring out the black money proved wrong altogether. Because when 99% of the currency comes back, naturally the assumption has failed. So it was basically an error of judgment, or it was also a problem of intent. Why was it done? I still don't understand. And in fact, a very globally acclaimed economist who also happened to be our Prime Minister, Dr. Manmohan Singh, his comment was the most authentic on this. He knew the subject, he was a Prime Minister, and he said that demonetization was a wrong move. In fact, it was a disaster. So, in fact, demonetization is a drastic interference into economy. And such interference is only done when you don't have any other means. In fact, it was done in Zimbabwe when there was a huge, what we call inflation. But there was no such thing. In fact, inflation is now higher. This is the time. So that was not needed. Zimbabwe did it. And the European Union case was an entirely different story. It was needed then. And then even there, I'll tell you one thing. When I went there, I found that the Switzerland people, they still insisted on getting a franc rather than euro. And they said very clearly when I was there for a coffee at a restaurant, the lady over there, she said that, look here, I will not accept your coins, euro coins. You will pay us in cash and we will return you in francs. So that is the scenario. So it was not needed. Second, India is a different case altogether. India is a country where, in fact, more than 90 or maybe it's a conservative estimate, I think 95% or more people are dependent on cash. No, the kind of people who are street vendors. In fact, recently it has been proved now that the informal economy is a huge chunk of our economy. And the informal economy entirely depends on cash. So what we were planning to do, I don't understand. And then there's another issue. It affected the farmers in a big way. Now, you know what happened? Farmers' income is, agriculture income is not taxable. Naturally, the income that is generated through agricultural means cannot be called black. And second, maybe the agriculture, people engaged in agriculture profession would have been used for stashing this money in the banks. And something like this must have happened. So now, why was it so desperate? Why was the government so desperate to ensure a cashless economy, which they later on revised, less cash? Initially, they started, we want to make a cashless economy. No country in the world is a cashless economy. The highest is Denmark, which is around 90% or so cashless economy. Because in India, how can you think of a cashless economy where 90% of the people depend on cash? The street vendors, you drive through any street, any populated street of a country's township or city, and you'll find a vendor every 10 yards or so, every 5 yards or so. Now, do you expect him to go cashless? Because his business is a shifting business. In the winter, he sells boiled eggs. In the summer, he sells fruits. Now, naturally, you don't expect him to buy a posh machine and go for that. It helped only those people who were techno-savvy, and that also is a big problem. Techno-savvy, we go by the numbers of mobile phones and mobile connections. That is not the case. People like us also are not as techno-savvy as many people who are using mobile phones, although we teach in IIT. So that was another issue. That why go cashless? I don't understand. And now the reality is that today, in fact, we are again flooded with cash because after Corona, that was the only way out. India is a country where there are temples with high cash flow. There are beggary is a profession out here. And there are those street vendors right on the roadside. So all these assumptions were entirely faulty, and it was on the basis of these assumptions that the decision was taken. But it was certainly not prudent enough, keeping in view the nature and state of Indian economy. 50 to 60% of people use cash. So, and then the cash, I don't know where it all has started, but as and when people spend cash, they are very careful to not to spend unreasonably. In fact, a very simple case would illustrate this. When these days, of course, there are no that public call offices, PCOs, but when they were there and they were very common on the streets of India, I always observed that in certain PCOs, when the machine was not giving the reading of how much money you have spent talking, people would spend more. And when it was giving the indication how much money you are spending, people would talk less and spend less. So naturally, this has to be understood. Cash has a value that digital transaction cannot have, and it has an impact that digital transaction cannot have. This is typically a means of the elite class, the less than 5% of the people who are making all sorts of noise. Cashless cannot happen in a country like India, at least in the next 50 years or so. Then of course, the government started with cashless economy. Why, I don't understand. But anyway, cashless economy. And then they revised that we'll go for less cash. So, the entire decision was poorly planned. And the tragedy is not that. The tragedy is that all the politicians, those who were not in favor of the demonetization, they also were always emphasizing that it was poorly planned. No, the decision was wrong right from the day one. There was no question of planning. You could not have planned it properly. There was no question. It was not needed at that point of time. And that is what is important to understand. And in fact, later on now the politicians are saying that it was a wrong decision. But at that time, they did not say that. They said that no, it was poorly planned and it was not, thought carefully and things like that. That is all, beating around the bush. These politicians, in fact, I talked to many people in the parliament and they said, nee, planning was not proper and things. I said, no, it's outright wrong. It was not needed at all. And it affected the poor severely. It affected the economy severely. It affected the, real estate. It affected the agriculture. It affected the street vendors. It affected many people. The what we call the daily wage earners, they were all affected. Many jobs were lost. Millions of jobs, as you rightly said, were lost. And what was the outcome? Back to the square one. And at that time also, the supply of black money was, hardly 5% or less. That will always be there, because there are many other reasons which facilitate hoarding of black money. And demonetization cannot be the answer. It is not the answer. You have to change your taxation policy. You have to change the way people look at government's fiscal policy and things like that. So it was not a right decision, and the economy paid a heavy price. In fact, we are still not able to recover from that shock 5 years down the line. So that is my take on it.
Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Ramoth Pathak, for giving your very, very strong views against demonetization. And he raised a very pertinent question. He says the topic should be whether it is needed or not. And he says it's supposed to be not needed. It's not required in India. And he has given all the reasons. And the reasons which he gives is very, very clear. He says India is a cash economy because of the structure of the country, because of the street vendors, farmers, beggars, the temples, how you can control. And what is the result? We found that almost the entire money came back. Although these figures are also not authentic figure, because they have put this thing up from away from the RTI purview, which is again shocking. If the government is doing something, this is not a anti-national activity that suppose somebody will come to know how much currency has come back to country, but they have put it like this and they projected like this. Only after 2 years, when the RBI has given the figures, then only we came to know that money has come back, and it is a totally failure. And according to Professor Pathak, it failed everywhere, wherever it is tried. And he says it is a whim and wish of the political leader that have become a disaster. It has created havoc, and we have now come to the square one position. I will say not even a square one position. We have now cash is multiplied, which is seen in this. Thank you very much, Professor Dr. Ramoth Pathak, for giving your very, very strong views. Now, I would like to invite my next panelist guest, and he is Dr. Santosh Kumar Patnayak. Dr. Santosh Kumar Patnayak is the former Managing Director, Indian Railway Finance Corporation. Dr. Patnayak is a strong visionary, multidisciplined management professional with over 3 decades of rich and varied experience across government departments and public sector enterprise of India. He belongs to 1989 batch of Indian Railways Account Services. Dr. Patnayak completed his Masters in Applied Geology from Indian Institute of Technology, IIT ISM in 1985. He did Masters in Public Management from Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, National University of Singapore in 2005. He did Doctor in Philosophy, PhD in Management from Birla Institute of Technology, Mesra, Ranchi in 2019. Apart from holding key positions in Indian Railways from 1989 to 2013, Dr. Patnayak has the distinction of holding key management positions in the state and central public sector enterprises for nearly a decade, both on deputation and on absorption. After taking voluntary retirement from Indian Railways in 2013, Dr. Patnayak joined Heavy Engineering Corporation as Director Finance from 2013 to 2017, and then as Managing Director of Indian Railway Finance Corporation from 2017 to 2018. For his exemplary work in office automation and computerization, Dr. Patnayak was decorated with the prestigious Railway Minister's Award in 1999. In his last assignment as MD IRFC in 2017, Dr. Patnayak achieved a unique milestone by taking the lead to raise 500 million US dollars for the Indian Railways at a competitive price through issue of climate bonds, certified green bonds in the overseas market, which incidentally is the first of its kind for the railway transportation sector in an emerging economy like India. Right now, he is pursuing his own ideas and passion for institution building and academics. Welcome, Dr. Santosh Kumar Patnayak on our show. Dr. Santosh Kumar Patnayak, you have heard what Professor Dr. Ramoth Pathak has mentioned. And he outrightly rejected even the idea of demonetization. He says, forget about the success or failure. This is a totally disaster. They should have not started it at all. You being a person of finance, you have seen and you have worked with the government, semi-government, and you have seen the working of government. You have also seen how the decisions are taken on the higher level, whether they have decisions like Professor Patnayak mentioned, whims and wishes of one person, or it is a expert committee's report which are discussed on different levels, and then only like you have the part and parcel to raise 500 million US dollars at that time, whether it was your only wish and whims and wishes, or it was a conscious decision with the expert committee discussed in different panels, and then it was done. So all those aspects are there. But main topic is today is demonetization, success or failure. Dr. Santosh Kumar Patnayak, please.
Thank you, Mr. Goel. Good morning, viewers. Well, demonetization, success or failure. Professor Pathak has rightly put his views. I think most of the people in this country will agree to this viewpoint only. Well, let me start with a very light note. I remember when this demonetization thing came to picture on 8th of November 2016. There was a lot of hue and cry from the following day, and it continued for almost like a year or so. At that time, many stories, particularly funny stories about the government taking this decision was moving around. So I am just going to quote one particular story which is very fresh in my memory. There was a terrific monster which appeared before our finance minister, the then finance minister Arun Jaitley, and asked him 99 questions pertaining to the demonetization. And he asked him to reply all 99. And if he fails to answer any one of them, the monster cautioned him, you will be removed from the post of your finance minister. But it so happened Arun Jaitley answered all the 99 questions. And satisfied with all these answers, the monster gave him a chance to ask him a question in return. But he also cautioned him, if I'm going to reply your question correctly, then I'll make your life further horrible. In the sense, I'll be putting questions after questions to make your life miserable. But yes, if I fail to answer, I'll take my own course of action. So Arun Jaitley, he asked him, no, he was a very witty finance minister. So he put a question to the monster. Can you collect all the 500 and 1000 rupee denominations from this country which was demonetized? The monster thought for a while and left the place, never to appear before the finance minister. So the moral of the story, this funny story, is that the force which were put to demonetization was an infructuous effort, in a simple words. I think Professor Pathak has rightly told the darker side of the demonetization. I don't see anything further more to add on it, but yet then I'm going to just analyze it a little, prospectively. Like, if you closely look at the demonetization as a policy of failure, we must look at the objectives first. What are the three important objectives for which the government decided, particularly the Modi government decided to bring it after a gap of almost like 40 years or so, 4 decades. You said the last demonetization happened in 1978, which was again a disaster then. But without learning that lesson, the government decided to go for it with the three important objectives in mind. One, to fighting the black money. Second, the flushing out of the fake currency note, the counterfeit notes. Third, creating a cashless economy. Now, coming to the fighting back black money, did you really succeed? No. You have already given the figure that out of the money in circulation, the currency note in circulation, almost everything came back to the economy within less than 1 year. 99% of the money has come back to the system. What does it mean? It was actually the savings with the people, hard-earned savings with the people, maybe a lot more with the richer class people, which has come back to the banking system again. Later on, Piyush Goel, who was looking after the finance minister post for some time, in February 2019, he claimed, well, we have got back about 1.3 lakh crore of money to the system, black money to the system. But the original estimation when this move was taken up was almost like 3 to 4 lakh crore black money will come back to the system. That didn't happen. In fact, Arun Jaitley in his budget speech of February 2017, he has admitted the failure on the demonetization policy. Now, looking back, we can ask this question again, why the government took a conscious decision, didn't take a conscious decision, consulting the economists or for that matter, the RBI. In his book, I Do What I Do, the former RBI governor, Raghuram Rajan, has disclosed that he never supported the idea of note ban and deeply felt that short-term impacts of this exercise could outweigh the long-term gains. And that's exactly what has happened. Many economists soon after the demonetization declaration, has criticized the move of the government. So it clearly says that the government, in their own wisdom, never consulted the RBI, nor they consulted the economists. So to that extent, failure was quite obvious, and it really happened. Now, second part of the objective is flushing out of the current fake currency note. Did it actually happen? Nobody really knows. Fake currency note was very much there in 2016, 17. Even today also, if you see in the circulation, RBI themselves have disclosed there is quite a good amount of counterfeit notes in the system. I have certain figures to share with you. 2017-18, it was 2.4 lakhs of counterfeit 100 rupee currency note. 1890, it went up to 2.2 lakhs. And 1920, the number went up to, number has slightly reduced, but it is around 1.7 lakhs. But if you add the other counterfeit notes of 500, which has recently been in circulation, the number is quite huge. That means on the second objective, also the government could not achieve the goal. And third is the creating the cashless economy. Yes, cashless economy was the order of the day when things started, because if you remember, due to the digital backbone infrastructure development in the country, more and more people are using the smartphones around that time. Even if this demonetization policy would not have come, the cashless economy would have slowly grown up, because e-commerce activities were growing, right? And the new things like UPI transactions were also coming into picture. So things would have gone in a normal way. So even though the government claims that because of the demonetization, the cashless, there was a boost to the cashless economy, I think many may not accept this argument. Because in the normal course, whatever we have achieved till this time, it is no doubt quite an astounding achievement, the type of UPI transactions which are happening today. And thanks to the COVID pandemic, because of COVID pandemic, people started going for the more of cashless transaction, thinking that touching the currency notes will affect them with the COVID-19. So that's one of the reasons why this thing, the UPI transactions, for that matter, the cashless transactions has increased quite a lot. But it has nothing to do with the demonetization. It might have given an impetus, but it was not toward its the implementation for a cashless economy. As Professor Pathak has rightly said, we cannot achieve 100% cashless economy in a country like India, which is still an emerging economy. And rightly so, in 2016-17, the type of informal economy, the extent of informality in our economy was there. It only get disturbed because of this demonetization. We had the the informal economy of which was contributing almost 52% to the GDP growth. Now, soon after the demonetization, it has declined to the extent of 20%. So basically, if we are going to analyze in a perspectively why this demonetization thing could not take up, then we need to analyze with three particular specific questions. Question number one, was it a successful surgical strike on illegal cash? The answer is no. The second, has demonetization pushed India towards a cashless society? Yes, it has pushed, but we cannot attribute everything to the policy of demonetization. As I have already said, it has a lot to do with our telecommunication setup or digital setup and the development in the IT sectors. India is moving towards the cashless transaction. Now, the third question, did monetization lead to a tax windfall for a state, for our state, for our country? Now, if you analyze the figures of cash, indirect tax collection, a ratio of indirect tax collection to the GDP, it has no doubt improved. And the number of taxpayers, it has gone up from 4 lakh to 11 lakh, 4 crore to 11 crore. 4 to 6 crores was earlier to the demonetization, and subsequent to demonetization, it has gradually increased and gone up to the level of 11 crores. But is it because of demonetization? I'll say an emphatic no. The things which has happened subsequent to that, the GST in 2000, GST move by the government in 2018, and then corporation tax move in reduction in corporation tax in 2019. So if you put all together, the GST is a major contributor towards bringing more of people within the tax economy. Demonetization per se has not contributed much towards the tax economy. Now, the fourth thing is that did demonetization, the fourth question, did demonetization help the country in their economic growth? A resounding no. Why? As you see, with the fall of the informal economy, India's GDP growth was severely impacted. If I quote the figure, in 2011-12, prior to demonetization, the growth rate, the GDP growth rate was 5.2%. 16-17, the year of monetization, it was one of the highest, 8.3%. Now, what happened in 1920? Gradually, it declined to the level of 4%. And 2021, thanks to the COVID pandemic, it has gone down to minus 7.3%. So, this has mainly happened because we have given a big, I can say, a push to the, I can say a big blow to the informal economy in the country, which is yet to come up to the right level right now. But thing is that, as Professor Pathak has said, as we can see, the country is again flushed with the cash compared to what it was there in 2016-17. The cash in circulation has increased many times, almost like 3 times, you can say. So if it has happened so, there's always a possibility that we are, despite having the cashless, more of cashless transaction, UPI transaction, the informal economy is again going to take root in the country. So what can you infer from that? Now you have gone for some policy which has forced the economy to go downward with the slashing of informal economy. Again, the same economy is coming root. Now, if you look at this, if you give a look at this informal economy, it is sustained because of the small businesses. As Dr. Pathak has said, the roadside vendors, they contribute much towards the informal economy. And apart from that also, the petty traders, the retailers, even the wholesalers for that matter, they are depending more on the informal economy. Now with this demonetization, it has got severely impaired. And this stays, if it is coming again to the Indian economy, it will again be disastrous. The efforts which you are taking for a cashless transaction, it will never get a boost further. And the very objective of taking away the black money or the fake currency notes can never be sustained in the economy further. So it will be a big disaster for the economy to come. Now it's good that the cashless transactions is going up thanks to the normal people's behavior to go towards it, to adopt this. But then let us try to again understand how this Indian economy can be revived back to the path 5 years after demonetization. The COVID pandemic has really created a big, dent on the economy. Coupled with that, the impact of the demonetization is still being felt in the informal economy. Now, India is trying to achieve the level of 10% growth in the years to come, or else our far distance dream of becoming a developed nation by 2030 cannot be achieved. So, without going to the, analyze whether the demonetization is a failure, was it is a success? Yes, it was a big failure, and it has got a limited success so far. It's got impact on the economy is concerned. But then the big question is, India as a growing economy, will it be able to sustain in the years to come from the impact of the demonetization? Now it requires for government to go into the dashboard again with the policy planners, the economists, and see how best they can revive the economy from the demonetization impact and the COVID impact to bring back to the normal. So that's going to be the biggest challenge for the government, for the country planners, and for the policy planners of the country, and for that matter, the economists as well. So with this note, let me close my talk here.
Thank you very much, Dr. Santosh Kumar Patnayak, for giving your views. And Dr. Patnayak, as Professor Pathak has mentioned, the same way he says there's a disaster, total failure, and he has given the questions. These are what were the objectives of this demonetization, and he says on all the objectives, whether it was for the fighting for the black money, or to remove the fake currencies, or to see to it that the impact in the of the cash transactions or the digital transactions will be more and not the cash transactions. In all the fronts, according to Dr. Patnayak, monetization failed, and he is rather saying right now the time is to think about it seriously, how to come out from this impact even after 5 years. Thank you very much, Dr. Santosh Kumar Patnayak, for giving your strong views. I would like to invite my next panelist guest. He is Advocate Shashank Deo Sudhi. Advocate Shashank Deo Sudhi is practicing in Supreme Court, New Delhi, and various high courts of the country for over 20 years. He has been appearing in the courts for public causes besides commercial litigations across the country. He appeared in more than 50 public interest litigations, which includes health issues, education, environment, aviation issues, etc. He has also raised the issue of the free testing of COVID-19 citizens in the private as well as government labs across the country. He has also raised the issue of regulation of airfares by way of PIL in Delhi High Court. He has also raised the issue of Shaheen Bagh protest in Honorable Supreme Court on the ground the fundamental rights of the common citizen should not be violated, and several other issues that are in public domain. His life is dedicated to millions of masses who are in need of the justice. Welcome, Advocate Shashank Deo Sudhi, on our show. Advocate Shashank Deo Sudhi, you have heard what Professor Dr. Ramoth Pathak as well as Dr. Santosh Kumar Patnayak has mentioned. And both are very, very clear, in a very clear terms, both have said that this is not even a failure, it's a disaster. And they say it's a wrong decision taken by the leadership, and it has created havoc, and its impact is still there. The negative impact is still there after even the 5 years. But we would like to know from your side, a legal person, you have seen all the legality of demonetization. The cases were filed, but the honorable courts have all rejected those cases. We would like to know your views on demonetization, success or failure. Advocate Shashank Deo Sudhi, please.
Good morning, Mr. Lal, for having me, and good morning, my co-panelists, and good morning to my viewers. At the very outset, I would like to say that so far as the legal mechanism is concerned, we have a very limited option. our law is completely handicapped to arrest the government decision to do certain things, because the Honorable Supreme Court had categorically stated in numerous judgments that the policy decision of a government cannot be challenged. It cannot come within the purview of fundamental right of a citizen. So therefore, law is very clear. If a government is taking any kind of policy decision, the court power is completely divested. The court cannot interfere into the decision of the government. And in addition to that, we have a separation of power. The legislature, executive, and judiciary. All organs of the state are having a defined power to act. So therefore, following the principle of separation of power, normally the judiciary does not interfere in the policies of the government, and therefore all the petition which had been filed against the demonetization has been rejected by the Supreme Court. So this is the legal position. However, I have a different point of view from my co-panelist. It may not be disaster. It may not be, a failure. It can be a mistake, because the policy which are being made by the government, definitely it might have been made with the suggestion of the expert. Though the policy of demonetization has not achieved the intended and desired result, but it cannot be a failure. It can be a mistake, because we are facing every day the occurrence of mistake, either in the court or in private life also, because the government is also like runs like the same thing, because the government might not have thought at that particular point that it can cause a hardships to the common people. Of course, the government was conscious of the fact that it might cause hardships, but the major objective of the government is to arrest the flow of the illegal money and counterfeit currency across the country. And to some extent, if I am not wrong to say, the demonetization has achieved the purpose of at least creating an awareness of the illegal money and black money which are in the circulation. It is no doubt, it is a fact that rupees 15.41 crore, lakh crore money was in circulation at that time, and after demonetization, the rupees 15 lakh point 31 crores has been recovered. It has come into the bank, and only 10,500 crore has been has stayed out of the bank. So almost 99% of the money has come to the bank. So this policy of demonetization has absolutely no success, no doubt about it. But the bigger question which I am trying to say, that if a government takes a certain decision, of course, it is a decision for the betterment of the common people, because we have voted the government in a power, and certain policy may be right and may be wrong, but that should not be a yardstick of judging a policy of the government. We have to see from the different point. Statistics is a very attractive way of simplifying the things. But the major question is that whether it has helped in a digitalization of the economy. Yes, of course, it has helped. Of course, COVID has also contributed, but it has created no doubt awareness amongst the people. It has also to somewhat prevented the Hawala transaction. The common people of the country has fallen back to the cashless economy. The incidences of the terrorism how the illegal money are being transacted through the Hawala and the other sources. It has, no doubt, it has not eliminated, but yes, to a certain extent, it has put an arrest to the circulation of the illegal money. And finally, with what I in the court also, what I'm finding that everything are being done through digitalization. So, given the darker side, definitely it is a mistake. The people have suffered a lot. We have a economy of poor people. A lot of street vendors. Informal economy we have, and the people have suffered a lot. Undoubtedly, there is no question, and this was absolutely mistake. But the mistake has a chances of being rectified. The failure has not necessarily being rectified, but the mistake can be rectified. So, what essentially I'm trying to say, that no decision of the government has the two sides. I mean, every decision of the government has two sides. There is a failure, there is a success, there is a mistake. But we have to see the positive aspect of the decision of the government also. The government has intended to do certain things. Unfortunately, the intendment of the government has not bore fruits, and it has fallen flat. But can we forget the positive things which had come out? Can we forget that the common people, the majority of the people came to know why the digitalization is being done? Because as an advocate, I was also not aware of the word demonetization, because I was a student of law. For the first time, I came to know in 2016 when it had happened, and I myself suffered from the demonetization. But I am seeing the positive aspect of the demonetization also. It may have impacted the economy. It may have impacted the other sectors, but it has positively impacted so many things. The people realize that what the government can do. Overnight everything has been changed. The people knew that 500 and 1000 note had been banned. So the decision of the government is a decision which cannot be challenged in the court of law. And therefore, even if our fundamental rights are being violated, we cannot approach to the court, because we do not have law. And I must quote the Caesar, Julius Caesar, one famous line: Caesar wife is above the suspicion. The RBI is without suspicion. Whatever decision the RBI is taking for the betterment of the common people, the procedure, the functioning of the RBI is so myopic that you cannot get the information through the RTI what is the exact situation. And whatever the information which are coming in the mainstream and social media, the information is not absolutely adequate and correct to form an opinion. It is totally myopic. Our financial institution like RBI is not at all forthright in giving the information about the business transaction which are happening in our country. So we need to ensure the transparency of the RBI in the financial institution. We need to, if the government had failed, no doubt. I mean, it has failed. This is the fact, because the statistics is saying. It is also very clear that it has not worked. We all know, because Mr. Pathak and Mr. Patnayak had rightly put everything in perspective by giving the statistics. But the fundamental and cardinal issue is that whether those information which are coming in the mainstream media is correct or incorrect. The decision to make a informative information decision, we need a data. We need a papers that exactly this has happened. We do not have exact information which can be instrumental us to make a decision that whether it is a failure or a success. It is justly from where the data is coming, from where the information is coming, I do not know, because we have also filed RTI. We did not get any kind of information. We have got this information through the informal sources. So my point is that the policy decision of the government is the decision which we cannot challenge in between without understanding the outcome. For example, I am telling you, I will equate the situation that when a person in a cricket match, a opener goes to the field and he is out, by zero, can we say it is a disaster, it is a failure? Of course, it can be said to a mistake, because he had gone there, he tried, he made efforts, but ultimately he got out. The purpose is that a government has made an effort, that efforts has not really achieved the intended result. Of course, it is a failure, no doubt it is a mistake, mistake of a policy decision, which has resulted lot of hardship. I, through you, want to make one thing very clear, that we have a very, very limited law in our country to check the government whenever it goes wrong, because every decision which are being made by the government are having the possibility of making a disaster or making a mistake. And by that mistake or disaster, the common people are suffering. So I must understand that the government must be throttled and must be stopped immediately if a decision is going this way or that way. But our political leadership is not like that, sir. We are a democratic country. We do not have law, because the legislature of our country are making a law which are good for the people or bad for the people. Both law are being made, because no right is absolute. When you go, like, for example, demonetization can be disastrous for us, and it can be good for the another people also. But the fact of the matter is that we have to balance it out. The government perhaps had not balanced it out, and therefore it was, no doubt, it was a big mistake which the government has done, but it cannot be said to be failure. It cannot be said to be disastrous. It can be a mistake which the government can rectify it after understanding the whole complication and implication of the decision. So therefore, with this note, I must say to you that it is a big mistake which the government had done, and of course, the government must have realized that what it has done to the common people, to the government, to the economy, the government is full aware of this very fact. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Advocate Shashank Devsudhi. And advocate, according to him, it's a mistake of the government. Whether so we cannot term it as a failure or the disaster. But only my point submission is, if a doctor commit a mistake and the patient dies, and then we think that we can rectify the mistake, it is not possible. And one more point I would like to bring the attention of Advocate Shashank is, he says we are not knowing these data. The RBI has released the data in the last week of October, where they have mentioned that the 3 times cash is there now. So all the data, what I have quoted in my report, are authentic. One can search it at the RBI. But yes, you are right. In the RTI, initially, they were not releasing anything, how many currency notes have come out. And one very important point which Advocate Shashank has made, and which is very, very alarming, and which I think the citizens of India should understand and should take that note of it, that the Supreme Court should have a power even for the policy decision, because the policy decision doesn't mean that you can harm the fundamental rights of the public at large. And this was not for an individual or few people. It harmed it for a majority, I must say, the majority of the people of the country. But Advocate Shashank, they admitted that yes, it was a wrong decision taken by the leadership. So thank you very much, Advocate Shashank Dev, for giving your views. Now my question goes to Professor Ramoth Pathak. Professor Dr. Ramoth Pathak, first question to you is, do you think it was the whims and wish of Mr. Modi? Because as per the media reports, Mr. Jaitley, the then finance minister, was not consulted. The RBI governor was only consulted after the earlier governor was removed, and the signature of the next governor was taken on the notes, and then afterwards also he also resigned. So he was not consulted when what is going to be done. And as per the reports, only few rich and mighty people were knowing about this. Otherwise, we have not seen Mr. Ambani in a queue to exchange the notes. We have not seen Mr. Adani in queue for exchange of notes. We have not seen in our Honorable Prime Minister standing in a queue changing the note, and we know that everything has been closed, and me and you, everyone has to go there, whether you are a professor or a doctor or a maid servant, then how come they got the money to run their household, to eat the foods regularly? Professor Dr. Ramoth Pathak, please.
Uh, as far as the question that you have put to me is concerned, I will again repeat the same example which I gave Indira Gandhi's example of nationalizing the bank. So, see, there are certain decisions which politicians take with some advice from some close quarters. Now, whether that advice is from the right quarters, knowledgeable quarters or not, that is very difficult to make out. But as far as the things stand, we are very sure that it was a closed circle that was responsible for this decision. And I would like to add to what Advocate Shashank has said, that yes, it was a mistake, but it is mistakes that lead to disasters. In fact, there's a, I mean, difference in terminology. So a mistake leads to disaster. If a batsman goes out for zero and the entire team gets out for 42 or 50 runs, it is a disaster. If a batsman goes out for zero and the second and third batsman play centuries, it is not a disaster. So the disaster or not will depend on the outcome rather than on the action. So even if it was a mistake, it was a disastrous mistake that cost economy heavily.
Okay. Thank you very much. Professor Pathak, you are there, or shall I ask you one more question?
You can
If you
ask.
okay, I will ask right now.
Right.
Okay. So my second question to you is, you are asking what was the intent. Now
Yes.
I am telling you the intent. Intent was to take out, to put the pressure on the politicians of Uttar Pradesh, Punjab, Uttarakhand, because the elections were there due in 2017, 17, and everybody was knowing that because Mayawati or Samajwadi Party, they have lots of funds in cash, and this was the intention. It was not intention to stop the black money. It was not the intention. This was the intention. Now, what you say about this?
I'll repeat again, Balaji Desai also had the same intention. That is public now.
So we can say that whatsoever the actions they are taking, they are not interested for the welfare of the public. They are only interested to win the election by hook and crook.
The tragedy with most democracies now is that they are more concerned about the next election rather than the next generation. And that is the root cause of every problem.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Pathak. Now my question goes to Dr. Santosh Kumar Patnayak. Dr. Santosh Kumar Patnayak, every decision, whenever the policy decision, Professor Pathak also said, Advocate Shashank also mentioned, were always taken with a consultation of experts, those who are really expert, and in this case, the economists, the finance experts, etc., etc. But when our finance minister was not in loop, who was supposed to be a very good, as you have only mentioned the witty person, but his knowledge, no doubt about it. Uh, God bless him wherever he is. But he was not in loop. No one, no, not we have no dearth of economists in our country, and I'm sure no right-thinking economist will give this type of advice. Even if you recall, Dr. Manmohan Singh in the parliament mentioned very clearly that this will impact 2% downfall of the GDP. In the reply, they have said, now after some time when the GDP was not affected for a few months, they says we don't want Harvard education. We are better to have a 10th educated or no education. And what happened? We have seen, you have also seen that gradually the GDP has gone down. My question to you is, do you think expert advice were not taking, or those experts who has given the advice, they befooled our honorable Prime Minister? They have given wrong advice just to defame our Prime Minister. What you say about this, Dr. Santosh Kumar Patel?
Well, Mr. Goel, uh, uh, Advocate Sasank has mentioned something during his talk. He says a mistake. Well, I do agree with that. It was a mistake on the part of the government to go for a decision as sensitive as a demonetization. But then the seriousness of the implication on the economy, on the country as a whole, if you take that factor into consideration, I'll rate it, it was not a mistake, it was a blunder, and it was a Himalayan blunder. And that's one of the reasons when the blunder goes beyond proportion, everyone is doomed to suffer for years to come. And that's exactly what is happening for our country at this stage also, 5 years after demonetization. Now, coming to your point in the question, whether the government had a good intent to take everyone, all the important stakeholders into their viewpoints into consideration before going for the policy. No, it was evident, as you say, even the finance minister was not consulted in his cabinet. That means, as Professor Pathak has said, it must have been limited to a very close circle, a coterie, maybe his own secretariat, PMO's own secretariat people. Nobody exactly knows. But yes, leadership has consulted a few people who have not given him the right advice. See, the best stakeholder in this particular decision would have been the RBI. Neither the RBI governor nor the RBI board of directors were consulted on this matter. Because according to one RTI reply, which RBI has given after a couple of years or so, in that RTI reply, RBI has specifically written, RBI's board did not support demonetization as a measure to counter black money. So this itself shows that the leadership has not consulted the institutions, they have not consulted the experts, the economists, or they have not consulted the best of the available experts in their own coterie. And that is how they become disaster after its implementation.
Okay.
Now,
yeah, sorry, go ahead, please.
Yeah. Now, about the political implications, well, when it was declared by Prime Minister himself on his 8 p.m. speech, when a televised speech, he had all good intent when he was speaking. But the things which you say, whether it was intention was something else or not, I think it is purely to speculation. I'm not a party to that sort of speculation, but I must say the government with its good intents has never gone for a good policy implementation. This is the fact of the matter which I'd like to conclude.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Patnayak. Now my question goes to Advocate Shashank Devsudhi. Advocate Shashank Devsudhi, who will be responsible these forced deaths, which we have seen that 100 or plus deaths, which was a direct reported deaths? What about those deaths which have occurred for wants of money? Many houses faced so much crunch. Yeah, you know very well. Will be responsible, or we will say chalta hai. We have done it. Let it be 140 million people, 1.40 this thing billion people. What difference it makes? कुछ मर गए तो क्या फर्क पड़ता है? Are we staying like this, or somebody should be taken legally responsible? Whether those coterie, as Dr. Patnayak has mentioned, they made party and say that why they have given this wrong recommendation to the Honorable Prime Minister. Advocate Shashank Devsudhi.
At the very outset, your question is quite pertinent. But as you know that the democracy is a deemed delusion. In our democracy, the politicians are making a wrong decision, but there is no accountability, there is no transparency. And our law is conspicuously silent on the responsibility of the politician who are making a wrong decision. I'm telling you my own experience that during COVID also the people have died. And the people have died because of the incompetence of the democratic government. They do not have resources to treat the COVID-infected people. Similarly, in this case, demonetization has definitely impacted the common people. They were in queue to get the money for their livelihood. But unfortunately, the government has no any heart to help him, to facilitate them. So this has happened. We do not have a compensatory law in our country. We have only one law, Article 21 of the Constitution of India, where the Honorable Supreme Court in the public remedy by writ, they can grant you certain remedy like a COVID infected patient. They have given really, 3 lakhs or 4 lakhs. I am not aware of the exact figure of that amount of money, but they have definitely given really certain amount of money whose parents had died out of COVID. Their dependent had got certain money. But our country, for example, I am just telling to you that our every minister, every public representative is taking the oath of the Constitution that they will uphold the constitutional mandate. But when it comes to implementing the mandates of the Constitution, they are not able to implement that mandate of the Constitution. And during the demonetization also, if the government has taken a wrong decision and the wrong decision had led to the death of hundreds of people, the government should be held responsible. And it is the Prime Minister who should be held responsible for that, because he is at the helm of the affairs. I do not have any hesitation to say so. So, because I also say that the government must bring out legislation, it is the duty of all the public representatives who are in the parliament or the state legislature to have a law who can compensate whenever the government goes wrong. But unfortunately, we do not have law, because these politicians are being affected if that law will be there, because everyone will be going to the court for the implementation of those laws. So the politicians are consciously not making any kind of such law which holds them responsible for the policy failure. So this is the exact situation in our country. So therefore, I conclude to say to you that all the policies, all the rules and regulation are intended for the poor. The rich are not coming and falling under the purview of those rules and law. They are class in itself. They are class in itself. They are equals as per the constitution, but they are class, and the common people are another class. So therefore, you cannot equate with the class of elite people and with the class of the common people. Bulk of the population are constituting the class of the people. So we have definitely made a cashless economy, but we have not really created a classless society. This is the only thing which I can say to you.
Okay, thank you, Advocate Shashank Deo. Now my question goes to Dr. Patnayak. Dr. Patnayak, being a finance person, and you also mentioned that we have going towards the digital mode of payment, and due to the COVID also, otherwise also. But in 5 years time, so much cash in circulation and so much black money is, this is a, I'm not saying this is a RBI report of the last week of October. Don't you think it is a failure of the government to curb the black money, or it was intention of the government to generate more money because of the 2019 elections were there and the money was again generated